Good morning. We have general question time. Question number 1, Stuart Maxwell.
To ask the Scottish Government what it is doing to improve access to the railway network for disabled people.
Minister Keith Brown.
Through £41 million of Access for All investment, 17 inaccessible stations across Scotland will have been made step-free by April 2014, and I have recently recommended to the Secretary of State that we increase that number to 19 by including Gleneagles and Milliken Park stations to the programme. This dedicated investment is complemented by Scottish Government support for other projects, such as improved access at Edinburgh Waverley and the construction of 7 accessible stations that will serve the Borders Railway. ScotRail will deliver over £8 million of additional station improvements across Scotland for disabled passengers, such as lower height ticket counters and accessible toilets, by the end of its current franchise term in March 2015. And these station investments are supported by a commitment that the ScotRail train fleet will be compliant with European vehicle accessibility standards by 2020.
Stuart Maxwell.
Can I thank the Minister for that answer? Last month I wrote to Transport Scotland to make them aware of concerns that disabled and elderly commuters from Lochwinnoch are being prevented from using their local train station due to inadequate provision for disabled access. Transport Scotland replied confirming that they were aware of accessibility concerns at Lochwinnoch and that there may be an opportunity to enable step-free access for passengers through the Scottish Stations Fund. Can the Minister outline some details about this fund and confirm how stations and local groups can go about applying?
Minister.
For station improvements, the local group or the other promoter will be required to prepare a proposal which demonstrates the anticipated benefits of the scheme and also any available source of third-party funding, whether it's a regional transport partnership or, in some cases, a private developer. They should then, once they have that proposal put together, discuss that with Transport Scotland officials. But more information on the process to access the Scottish Stations Fund is available on Transport Scotland's website. I should also say, though, of course, that another opportunity exists in future tranches of the Access for All Fund, which stations can bid into as well.
Kezia Dugdale.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I wonder if the Minister would be willing to revisit the issue of automated audio announcement hoots at Waverley Station. You'll know that I've written to him about it before, and I'm concerned that Waverley isn't part of the current 2015 work. Minister.
We have listened to representations which were made by Kezia Dugdale and others in relation to Waverley Station, most notably in relation to access for taxis. But if the member wants to write to me again to raise that again, I'm happy to look at it once more.
Christine Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Further to the answer to Kezia Dugdale with reference to the Borders Railway with all the stations in my constituency, what measures are in place not just for disabled access but for those with visual impairment?
Minister.
The 7 new stations which I have mentioned will comply with modern railway accessibility standards that will create step-free access to all platforms from the station entrances. ScotRail will implement existing arrangements for wheelchair users, for example, being assisted onto the train by staff deploying a boarding ramp to bridge the gap between train and platform where that's necessary. Of course, rolling stock tends to be of different heights in relation to the platform. On the issue of accessibility for those who are visually impaired, I would expect that Network Rail, in constructing the new railway and the stations, will have regard to the latest requirements in terms of accessibility for all, including those who are visually impaired.
Alison McInnes.
Presiding Officer, in December 2011, the Minister accepted the case being made by myself and others in the North East that Dyce Station should be included in the latest phase of Access for All. You'll know that Dyce Station is regionally significant, used by around 580,000 passengers a year, yet it is inaccessible to those with disabilities. Despite the Minister promising that a detailed option study would be completed by spring 2012, Network Rail will only say that it is still under discussion. Will the Minister give an update on the progress being made on the design of the scheme and reassure my constituents that the planned delivery date of the end of March 2014 will be achieved?
Minister.
Yes, I'm happy to confirm that Network Rail are progressing the plans for Dyce Station. They're doing go through the same process in relation to Dunblane, which is in my constituency, and also with Newton, Rosyth and Shotts, and these will be completed by April 2014.
Question 2, Kezia Dugdale.
To ask the Scottish Government what plans it has to support credit unions in light of the reported rapid expansion of high-interest short-term lending.
Minister Fergus Ewing.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government recognises the valuable role played by credit unions in providing financial services and products, including affordable loans, to a wide range of customers. We will do all that we can to promote credit unions as an alternative to high-interest short-term lending where this is appropriate.
Kezia Dugdale.
I thank the Minister for that answer, and we will of course return to this issue in the Parliament this afternoon. I wonder if today, however, he might agree to meet with me to discuss the issue of credit unions' creditor status, because they are of course very much at the end of the queue when it comes to bankruptcy cases.
Minister.
I'm happy to meet with the member to discuss these matters, and I'm delighted to note today, Presiding Officer, that the Daily Record, a campaigning newspaper for ordinary people in Scotland has got a 16-page pullout with very useful advice for those who suffer the misery and despair of being in debt. And if it's an order, Presiding Officer, I think it would be a very prudent investment to purchase a copy of the Daily Record today.
Linda Fabiani.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I wonder if the Minister is aware that East Kilbride Credit Union in my own constituency has recently agreed to, whilst building a new headquarters, to provide much-needed homes on the same piece of land. Does the Minister agree that credit unions can be a hub of such innovative practice within their own communities?
Minister.
Well, yes, I am aware of that. There are 110 credit unions operating around Scotland. They've got 250,000 members. Truly, they provide a marvellous service in Scotland. And across the Chamber, we want to promote the excellent work that they do. And I'm happy to endorse the work that is done in Linda Fabiani's constituency of East Kilbride, and also pay tribute to work that they've done elsewhere, such as First Alliance Ayrshire Credit Union, in partnership with local registered social landlords, to deal with the problems that are going to happen when the UK welfare reforms hit home, and to make sure that those who are going to be hit hard by those welfare reforms can get access to credit unions. That is truly excellent work, and I commend it to other credit unions across the country.
Margaret MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I apologise for just coming in here, but I want to put in record that my thanks are due to the Finance Minister, who gave an undertaking yesterday to do what he could to make sure that there's a kick-start given to credit unions, because there's quite a bit of training and recruitment, I think, that Linda Fabiani referred to. But if you add a tuppence worth, it'll be welcome too.
Minister, your tuppence worth.
Although Margaret didn't ask me any question, I'm happy to agree with what she said. And can I just add that credit unions have managed, I think we may well reflect, manage their financial affairs a lot more effectively than many banks that we might want to think about.
Question number 3, Dave Thompson.
Scottish Government what progress it is making on the provision of Gaelic medium schools.
Minister Alistair Allen.
The Scottish Government has made good progress supporting local authorities to establish Gaelic medium schools. When the current administration came to government, there were 2 Gaelic schools in Scotland. By the end of this session of Parliament, we expect there will be 8 Gaelic medium schools established or planned. I am also pleased to say we announced this morning a further £800,000 to Glasgow City Council to assist them in building their second Gaelic school in the city at Glendale. This announcement follows other Gaelic capital support to Argyll and Bute, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Highland and North Lanarkshire over recent years.
Dave Thompson.
I thank the Minister for that reply. He'll know that the Gaelic Medium School in Portree has been in the planning for a number of years now, but is not now likely to start until 2015-16 at the very earliest. Can the Minister give any encouragement that a quicker timetable may be possible?
Minister.
Well, the first point I would obviously want to make to the member is that the Scottish Government is prepared to make a significant investment in this project, and for that reason we will seek a firm reassurance from the Council that this project will go ahead and will be delivered as soon as possible, and in line with, as the member alludes to, the clear expressed wishes of parents. The Government's commitment to funding this project is not undermined by the present delay, and in addition to our commitment, we understand that there are local concerns about timescale, about overall costs and about the link to hostel renovation in Portree. I intend to explore those matters in discussion with the Council and again seek reassurance that the Scottish Government is supporting a project that will be delivered without undue delay.
Question number 4, James Donnan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with the UK Government about devolving consumer-related powers in light of the UK Government's plans to abolish consumer focus.
Minister Fergus Ewing.
A formal request for devolution of consumer powers was submitted in June last year with the support of, amongst others, COSLA and Consumer Focus Scotland. In December, the UK Government confirmed that those powers, which are already devolved to Northern Ireland, would not be devolved to Scotland.
James Donnan.
I thank the Minister for that answer. Does he share my disappointment with this grudging response and agree with me that this decision will have a detrimental effect on Scottish consumers already suffering from the draconian decisions taken by this Westminster Government? And if the UK Government are not willing to continue to provide a scheme such as Consumer Focus, then it's incumbent upon the UK Government to ensure that the Scottish Government is given the powers to do so, at least until March 2016, when we will have all the powers of an independent country.
Minister.
Well, yes, and you must ask yourself whether it is fair to pass these powers to Northern Ireland, but not Scotland. What's the rationale in that? And just yesterday, an example of the importance of these powers was manifest when Richard Lochhead and myself and consumer bodies discussed the issue of the higher charges for parcel deliveries to places in rural and island Scotland than in urban conurbations, thereby penalising consumers and small businesses who rely on reasonable costs and fair parcel deliveries. Westminster hasn't dealt with that, Presiding Officer. Maybe we do a better job.
Question number 5, Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with the Scottish Local Authorities Remuneration Committee regarding its Forward Work programme.
Minister Derek Mackay.
The convener of the Scottish Local Authorities Remuneration Committee on the 23rd of January 2013, and discussion included the future work programme of SLARC. In line with the provisions of the legislation that created SLARC, I believe there is no work to commission to SLARC at this time.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the Minister for his answer. Many councillors across the country that I've spoken to think that SLARC have been rather ineffective in carrying out their duties. Can I ask the Minister what COSLA's view on this issue actually is?
Minister.
I have discussed the matter with COSLA, who are content with their approach and my view. I've also written to the relevant committee in the Scottish Parliament to seek their view as well. Many people would call for the abolition of SLARC, not least the leader of the Labour group at COSLA. However, we value their role, but there is no work to be commissioned at this time.
Sarah Boyack.
Isn't it unacceptable that this committee was set up by statute by this Parliament, and rather than volunteering that information today, the members of the committee have all resigned due to their perceived feeling that the Minister was completely uninterested in their work, and that given it has done some good work in the past on council remuneration and ALIOs, would it have not been more appropriate to do this work far in advance of all 3 members feeling they had no option but to resign?
Minister.
Officer, there is no work to do, and I would have to ask Parliament what is the point of electing people, appointing people to a committee with no work to do? That doesn't seem like an appropriate use of public funds. However, if we require their advice in future, we're happy to do that and take their advice. Sometimes we will agree with the recommendations of SLARC, such as how the provision of ALIO places were created, and sometimes we will disagree with the recommendations of SLARC, such as substantial increases in pay to councillors at this time, which doesn't feel appropriate at this time. But we value the role, and if we require their input in future, we will of course seek it in line with the provisions as laid out in the legislation.
Question number 6, Bruce Crawford.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with the UK Government regarding the transition from the carbon emissions reduction target to Green Deal.
Minister Margaret Burgess.
In order to ensure that these programmes achieve positive outcomes for Scottish households and for the energy efficiency industry, Scottish ministers have engaged regularly over the past 2 years with UK Government ministers. They have engaged on the transition from the Great GB-wide carbon emission reduction target, which ran from 2008 to 2012. We've engaged in the development of the new energy company obligation, which replaced CERT, and we've also on the development of the Green Deal, which is a GB-wide programme which provides a market-driven finance mechanism to support individuals and businesses install wider energy efficiency measures in their properties.
Bruce Crawford.
Thank the Minister for her answer. Would the Minister agree with me that the UK Government's failure to ensure a smooth transition from CERT to Green Deal has resulted in unnecessary hardship for consumers and employees in the insulation industry? Is the Minister aware that in the recent past 4,000 people have lost their jobs, including 230 in Scotland, and that approximately 30,000 insulation works have been cancelled? And will she urgently lobby the UK Government to get their act together on this and avoid continued bad news for employees and consumers alike?
Minister.
We recognise that any change from one major programme to a new programme can impact on the delivery market. UK Government actions which delayed from the 1st of October to the 1st of January the introduction of the that replaces CERT, I believe and agree with the member that that certainly would not have helped the situation and will have put additional pressure on the insulation industry. While we have no specific information on the total number of jobs affected, we would be clearly concerned about any job losses in relation to these programme changes. Scottish ministers have been lobbying the UK Government on the design of both the Eco and the Green Deal on a number of issues, but specifically to ensure that Scottish SMEs can fully benefit from these programmes. And just recently, my colleague Fergus Ewing wrote again to the Secretary of State to outline his concerns that unless householders are able to choose their own installer under the Green Deal, the uptake will suffer. It's our view that unless local trusted tradespeople are fully engaged in Green Deal, householders will be less willing to undertake the necessary improvements to their homes, which of course will have a direct impact on the level of activity installers can assure. In addition, anyone facing redundancy will get help through the Skills Development Scotland coordinated local response team.
Question number 7, George Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what developments have been made towards integrating Scotland's transport system.
Minister Keith Brown.
Our transport vision is for an accessible Scotland with safe, integrated and reliable transport that supports sustainable economic growth. We are promoting integration between different services and modes of transport. An example of this is that the next rail franchise process will include an obligation on bidders to come forward with ways to properly integrate the different transport modes. In addition, our long-term ticketing vision is that all journeys on Scotland's bus, rail, ferry, subway and tram networks can be accessed using some form of smart ticketing or payment. Combined to these, Transport Scotland provides or supports 5 travel information services providing key travel information both pre-trip and in-trip to travellers by car, public transport or HGVs.
George Adam.
I thank the Minister for his answer. The Minister is aware that my constituency is well served with rail links, the M8 motorway and an international airport in Paisley. He may be aware that I have been working closely with partners to look at the development of a bus station for Scotland's largest town. Can the Minister confirm that such developments are in the best interest of the local economy? And can I also ask if the Minister could come to Paisley to see and discuss our plans for Paisley's bus station?
Minister.
I will, of course, be delighted to go to Paisley and to meet with Mr Adam. The whole purpose of our transport system is obviously to connect people, jobs, education, services, recreation, connect people to places. And local authorities are very well placed to understand the needs for bus services in their area and with transport operators to develop interchanges between transport services and modes, such as in Paisley. I should also say that as part of the work carried out with the bus stakeholder group, the Scottish Government is considering the use of additional investment to help in the development of local initiatives aimed at improving bus services and integration.
Malcolm Chisholm.
Given that plans for transport in Edinburgh are based on an integrated bus-tram network and the need to move seamlessly from one to the other, how does it make any integrated transport sense for the Scottish Government to say that concessionary travel will apply to one but not to the other?
Minister.
Well, I would refer Malcolm Chisholm to today's leader column in the Evening News, which is headed "Tram's Decision is a Victory for Common Sense," which also says we should also acknowledge the role of the new City Council and the Scottish Government, who have got their heads together to ensure this impasse will be overcome. We have reached the right destination working with the Council, and I think that should be applauded.
Question number 8, Colin Beattie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what events it will hold to promote the Year of Natural Scotland.
Minister Fergus Ewing, if you could be brief.
The Year of Natural Scotland got off to a great start with the Great Edinburgh International Cross Country and Winter Run on the 5th of January this year. The programme also includes more than 40 flagship events and over 500 partner events happening the length and breadth of the country.
Briefly, Mr Beattie.
I thank the Minister for his response. Does the Minister agree that having themed years like the Year of Natural Scotland, the Year of Creative Scotland and the Year of Homecoming bring greater interest to Scotland from an international tourist market?
Briefly, Minister. Yes.
Surprisingly enough, I do. And that's why CNN voted Scotland the top country in the world to visit. Scotland, number 1.
Before we come to First Minister's questions, members will wish to join me in welcoming to the gallery Ms Gordana Komic and Ms Vesna Kovac, the Deputy Speakers from the Serbian National Assembly.